So for tonight's class, we are going to talk about Libra through Pisces, and I started reading a really great book last weekend, and it was called How to Get the Love You Want, and I apologize for not having the author's name at the front of my head, but I can email it to you guys if you want the specifics, but it's How to Get the Love You Want. My friend Cassie's been telling me to read it for 6 months now. Finally, I downloaded it, and it was blowing my mind because it explained exactly what happens when we move into Libra energy, and how Libra energy informs Scorpio energy, and how Scorpio energy informs Sagittarius energy. And so I thought it was divinely perfect that I started reading this book last weekend, because it gave me an extra piece of the puzzle when talking about these energies. So, as you remember from last week, or last class, we talked about starting with Aries, starting the self. And as that self moved through the bottom half of the houses, or moved through Aries, from Aries to Virgo, we saw that self experience early life. It had its mom and dad, it had siblings, it had early thoughts about its world. It had early thoughts about separation from God. It had early thoughts about separation from its parents, you know. And all of those early lessons eventually get stored in a part of our brain that is very ancient. It's like the reptilian part of the brain. And the reptilian part of the brain is kind of a funny thing. Whenever it feels something, it feels that way as if it's always been that way, and it doesn't have any recollection of time. Okay? So if what the book was talking about was all of those early memories that we have of the good things about our dad, the bad things about our dad, the good things about our moms, all of the things we've stored, even about our grandmas or teachers that we respected, those images get stored in our limbic brain. And we create this like one thing, this one entity from all the good and bad traits that we remember from when we were little, of all of our caretakers. And any wounds or hurts or traumas that we experienced as children, those leave a mark on our reptilian brain. Well, as we move into the world and we decide that we want to have partnerships and relationships, the limbic brain, in its creation of this new entity, this like combination, this amalgam of like every single thing we remember about everyone we've ever cared about, is like a little like resonator bubble. And so when we look at people like that we want to become good friends with or want to date, we measure them against this little imaginary person that we've created. And so I'll say, oh, Bobby, and I'll kind of do like a subconscious thing. My other part of my brain, the brain that has an interface with the outside world, is going to bring in all this information, and it's going to feed the information to my reptilian brain and say, hey, what are these measurements, how does this stack up? And I'm going to say, oh, you know, he seems like really cool. but he doesn't match the wounds and the strengths from my childhood. Like he's someone I want to be friends with, but you specifically choose someone to be very intimate with, who will trigger all of your wounds and fulfill all of the promises that you didn't get promised when you were little. And so if he doesn't have the characteristics that my reptilian brain's looking for, then we probably won't end up dating. No matter how wonderful he is, he doesn't fit my wounds and my needs in a certain way. And so I'll continue looking, and of course, my partner fits all of them in some which way or another. He fits them, and so in the 7th house and in Libra, that's what drives that energy to partner. We are driven to be in partnership with someone who will fulfill the promises that we feel weren't fulfilled by our parents, and heal and trigger and heal the wounds that they gave us when we were little. And it doesn't mean that we're all, like for a child, even being born is a trauma. That's why it feels so good when we are held. And so we're not talking like abuse or anything like this. We're talking about just the trauma of living. And no parent can possibly fulfill a child's every need and want. It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And my belief is that it's impossible so that we're driven to, I mean, it's kind of like the chicken or the egg. Even though on a timeline, it appears that our childhood happened before we met our mate. But I suggest that we chose our parents to prepare us specifically for a specific union with a soul later in life. The book doesn't say this is this is just my brain being like, oh. But yeah, is there something about that? Yeah,
it makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And so when we meet this person, it feels very significant to us because we feel like there's these things we say, I feel like I've known you forever. I feel like I can trust you instantly. For some reason, you just feel like home to me. Well, that is the reptilian brain telling you this energy person matches all of those things. It matches it. And so we finally meet a person and we feel the feeling of like, wow, we're going to get catalyzed hardcore now. This is us subconscious, we don't actually want to be catalyzed. We have no idea that they match all the positive and negative characteristics of our caretakers as we were young. But they do, and in the beginning, it's very, very healing. In the beginning, all the hormones that are released through the early part of our relationship, it heals so much. We feel that for the first time we're listened to, for the first time we're nurtured, for the first time someone actually understands us, and it's an amazing feeling. But there's something else that happens when in that first part of the zodiac, we disassociate from parts of ourselves, okay? There are parts of us that we decide are not lovable or are not acceptable. It's not acceptable to be someone who ditches school and is a B student or whatever. Like whatever we decided, I don't know. For some people, it's not acceptable to be sitting in the front of the class and raising their hand all the time. So whatever you've decided, you've disassociated from those parts. Well, that person that you decided to partner with is also symbolizing all those disassociated parts of you. So it feels like they're completing you. So a whole bunch of projection is happening when we meet this person. We project the parts, and so we feel completed. We're like, whoa, you totally complete me. All of the parts I rejected are in you, and I love the fact that you know how to have fun and you know how to laugh because I'm so serious, and I love that blah, blah, blah. So it's a wonderful Libra time, and it's a balancing. The archetype of Libra shows the scales, and the scales want to be balanced. And so Libra qualities are ones that try to create harmony no matter what. And that harmony that we try to create personally for ourselves is finding someone who will balance us, finding a match to all those things I just talked about in the reptilian brain. On the external, you can see Libra traits to the shadow extent when you just try to always balance situations outside of you that aren't serving, so that are like, since you don't want conflict, if someone's a very, very stern person, you may try to balance things by being quiet so that you don't interrupt you keep the harmony, right? And so it can be kind of non-confrontational as well. But that is, I don't really like talking about the unevolved parts of these archetypes, because I feel that for the last 2,000 years, we've been really experiencing what it feels like to be imbalanced. And I feel that since we're going into this new age, talking more about what we want it to look like, what we're striving for, is beneficial. There's a lot of information about the shadow sides of all of these signs out there that is very easily accessible. But I just feel it's obsolete. I just feel it's gone, it's done. We don't have to worry about that stuff anymore. We just need to focus all of our attention on the highest evolution of each of these archetypes. And in Libra, that is what it is. It's understanding that the partners that we've chosen to be close to are helping us to heal parts of our youth and catalyze wounds so that we can feel them, and see the disassociated parts of ourselves so that we can readapt to them, so we can accept them back. And when you learn how to love another person unconditionally, it really is learning to love yourself unconditionally, because they are literally exhibiting all the parts of you that you don't love or that feel painful. And so learning unconditional love with a partner is a beautiful, beautiful step in learning how to unconditionally love yourself. They always say you can't love someone unconditionally until you learn how to love yourself. But I say, as long as you're consciously partnering, you can do both at the same time. Okay? So, as we move into Scorpio, that is the moment where the veil of the perfection of your partner starts to slip. It's the moment where you start actually seeing either the parts of yourself you don't really like in your partner, and you start to get like cagey, like, oh, I don't know, I need some space from this person, or oh, I don't know, they're acting whatever. And so you start to withdraw a little bit from those things that you don't want to look at for yourself, or the person just starts behaving more like themselves, and you start to realize, holy crap, all of these things I projected on them to help me to heal and grow are actually partially just my perception. They're actually a separate person altogether. They have all of their own personality traits, and the more I try to lock them into a box, the more I'm just gonna be triggered and sad by their behavior. And so that is the old way of doing things. The new way of doing things is to actually recognize the uncomfortable things in relationships, recognize what they are, and actually look at them from an evolutionary perspective. And that whenever we look at things from an evolutionary perspective, we're actually going into deep water. We're actually it's such a paradox. Scorpio has a few different kind of energies associated with it. They have the scorpion. Okay, the scorpion's kind of the old energy of Scorpio, where it's got the pincers out front and it's got the tail that whips you. And so this is when you see your partner and you're like, wait a minute, you're not anything like I thought you were. I have my guard up. And wait a minute, you're acting like just the way my ex did, or just the way my dad did, or you remind me of so-and-so. And so you strike them. So you come from a defensive point and you hit them with your venom, right? And that's the old way of Scorpio. And that's kind of an unconscious way of being in intimacy. The next stage of Scorpio is actually the eagle. And the eagle is able to open their heart and their wings and soar high above a situation and see things from the bigger picture. And so they look down and they say, whoa, if I look at my entire life on this grand scale and I can see that this partner is picked perfect for me by my reptilian brain to help me to heal and feel completed and all of these things, and every single thing that triggers me in this person is actually bringing something up for me to reckon with. It's actually giving me a beautiful mirror into myself. And so you have this eagle flying over a lake and reflecting off of it, right? And so this is a way that we use Scorpio energy to transform. And the third wave of Scorpio is actually the phoenix. So when we actually are able to allow intimacy and allow vulnerability and admit that we have these parts of us that we didn't want to look at, and we become whole again, well, first we burn up. First it completely deconstructs who we thought we were. I have all these ideas of who I am. I'm straight-laced for who I was, right? Straight-laced, straight A's, valedictorian of my college, all of these, I'm super smart, I'm the best daughter, I did everything right, I followed society's rules. all of these things, but I disassociated all of these other things, all of this like looseness and like non-seriousness. I took it all out. So when I met my partner and he was kind of like taking it easy and he would be emotional, and I was not emotional, you know, so he would be all these things. At first, I was like, oh my gosh, this person's crazy. Like, how does he even live? And so we have all these conflicts, and in the last, you know, couple of weeks, and during this like Venus, Mars, Pisces craziness, I've actually become so much more clear about the parts of me that I disassociated myself from. And it's helping me so much to see him as he's a person. He is a separate entity that has his own stuff going on. And sure enough, I'm showing him all kinds of things from his childhood too. And so when this happens, we burst into flames. You know, when all of the things that we thought about ourselves fall apart, they burn off. It's not so much like, oh, I'm exfoliating. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm consumed in flames and I'm gonna lose my identity. And everything that we so carefully built in those first 6 signs from Aries to Virgo freaking falls apart. And that's exactly what's needed for the Phoenix to rise again. So in Scorpio, we have this opportunity to die to our old self and be reborn from the ashes. And that rebirth of who we are is what we're in right now, which is really exciting. So even though on a grander scale, I could go into Saturn and all this stuff, but let's just take my word for it. Okay, so that is Scorpio energy, and that's the archetype. That's the most evolved energy that you can use Scorpio with. So as we move into Sagittarius, this is a time to take new flight. This is a time to reinvent everything that not even reinvent, just discover all kinds of new things. Like once you let all of the old ideas and limiting beliefs that used to bog you down, once you let those burn off, you're free to have a completely new experience in the world. You're free to, your world opens up, and that's the energy of Sagittarius. That's mutable fire. And so it's the sign of the archer. He's like a centaur archer. So he's like got the horse legs, and he's got his bow and arrow, and so he can run really fast, and you know, everywhere is exciting. He looks across his horizon line, and he just looks for any interesting thing that he wants to run toward or shoot his arrows at. And so that is the new baby. That's the new self that comes from the experience of burning up your old self. And so that Sagittarius energy is really important. It's kind of chaotic, in my opinion, actually, because you're building something brand new. You don't really have anything to rely on from before. It's very mutable fire is going to be ending. It's the end and the beginning, right? It's an alpha and omega kind of situation. And it's the 9th house, and it's considered the 9th sign of the zodiac. 9 is considered like the end game. It's the last sacred number in numerology before you move to 10, which is a brand new ball game. And so it's a little bit related even to the Fool card in tarot, where you are starting a whole new journey. So the first step from after that new journey is going to be going into Capricorn, and Capricorn is that comes into the world right when the sun is coming back. It's right at the winter solstice. And so when the sun goes down and the days get shorter and shorter and shorter, we're going through that time with Sagittarius. And it's kind of interesting to me that as the light gets darker, we're given all this mutable fire to kind of play around with, right? But as the sun comes back, we move into Capricorn, and now it's time to build something with all of that new energy, all of that new inspiration. And so Capricorn comes in, and that's a cardinal earth sign. And Capricorn is it's like a weird, like hybrid, like fish goat. Like it's not even a real animal, but it's kind of like a mountain goat that's always jumping from hilltop to hilltop and rock to rock to reach the top of the mountain. And so Capricorn wants to achieve. It really wants to get to the top of the hill. It wants to keep rising higher and higher. And sometimes Capricorn energy, I feel like in the old paradigm, it was ruled over by kind of masculine ways. It's a feminine sign, it's an earth sign, but I feel like when you bring a masculine mind, boy or girl bringing a masculine mind to Capricorn, you're going to want a lot of quantifiable evidence in your world to validate your value. And I feel like the new paradigm is actually coming from a place of fullness and creative energy and building something brand new that's never been built before. Building, like starting a new business that's never even been in a location before. Starting a new, it's building your new life, really. And so as you're building your new life and you have all this new energy to do that, Capricorn gives way to Aquarius. And so if we were talking about the houses, usually the things that you built would affect the thought paradigms of the people of the community that you're a part of, right? And Aquarius is, if you just take the archetype by itself, it's all kinds of electronic and new information. And it's also the sign of spiritual evolution. And so I'm feeling like, and the figurine for the Aquarius is the water bearer, but what the water bearer is pouring out is actually electricity. It's not actually water, it's energy. And so Aquarius is that moment when we've built our lives and we've built our foundation and we've built ourselves into a place where we feel very grounded, we feel very centered on the earth, and now with all of this grounded and centered real, tangible reality, we have all of this electronic power, all of this energetic power to manifest and to, I feel like Aquarius is almost the ability to have telepathy. It's communication on a very large scale. Communication that's free from the constructs of of speech and the world, actually. And so in the house configuration, Aquarius is about group energy and the groups we're associated with. And so you can find spittering out, I don't know that much more about Aquarius. Like, we just went through Aquarius. Whatever just happened in the last 4 weeks, that was Aquarius. And it did a ringer on me, so this is another thing that's happened over the last couple of weeks. I can't really talk from my brain anymore. If I don't have information in my heart, I'm kaput. I don't have anything. And it's just the way it is, and I'm accepting it. At first it was kind of hard for me because I used to rely on my brain a lot. And I know Aquarius rules the brain, but over this last series of energies, my brain is taking a back seat. It can only receive information from my heart now. I can't just manufacture stuff anymore. And if I don't have something from my heart, then the brain is just like, that's it. So now we're moving into Pisces, and Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. And this is the energy that Mars and Venus have just gone through, and it's the energy that the Sun's about to go through. And it's the most mysterious one. Pisces is the two fishes moving together, and I feel that it's almost giving you this cyclical, it's giving you an energy of there's no beginning and there's no end. Even though we're just considered the last the fish are going to keep going around and around and around. Like, there's no such thing as a boundary. There's no such thing as a start and a stop. This is, you know, in one of my journals that I found, I had written this chart, right? And on one axis there was things that were absolutely necessary, right? But it went into infinity. And in one end of the spectrum, it was things that were absolutely impossible. And it went all the way down into infinity. So infinity to what is absolutely necessary, infinity to what is absolutely impossible. And then you had a line through the center these were possibilities. And the possibilities went infinite in both directions, right? And what I had realized is there are infinite possibilities. It goes on forever. It's actually a circle, but possibilities are infinite. Then things are either probable or improbable, but nothing is ever absolutely necessary and nothing is ever impossible. And so if you allow yourself to let Pisces inform you of that information, if you allow that kind of chart to sink into your awareness, that's the energy of Pisces. There's no absolutes. There's no thing. There's everything and there's nothing. It's how the sign of paradox is. And we're moving into that tomorrow. And so be prepared to experience what that means for you on a personal level. I don't even know what's gonna happen. But are there any other specific things that anyone wants to know about those signs I just talked about? Is there some more specifics? Like, I feel pretty complete about that summary. I feel like we can use the rest of the class to go into your charts again, because really, that's the most valuable part for you guys. When you can actually see how these energies work for you personally, then you'll start to feel it more viscerally. It's one thing to just hear me talk about it.
Question. On that diagram that you had, a lot of times you pointed out the opposites.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first half you were talking about the first 6 signs, mm-hmm. and how those are more personal, yep. to us. Mm-hmm. The next 6 are outside of ourselves. It's where we are in the world.
Yep.
Okay. So what are some of the opposites, and what does that mean with the 6 that you just talked about?
Perfect. Thank you. So the opposite of Libra is Aries. And so Aries energy is I am individual, or I'm separate. I have to differentiate myself from source, and I have to be complete and whole over here by myself. So Libra is the opposite, and it's that, ironically, it's when we allow, because you know, we think we're all separate and whole, and then we do all this work and we think that we're all completed, but the truth is, when we meet another person, that's when we come up against all those things that we have rejected and all those things. So the ironic thing is, even though Libra is asking us to be in relationship with others, and it's driving us to do that, it's actually driving us to do that for the sake of knowing who you are more fully, right? The way that they can feel opposing is if you refuse to go into the energy of Libra, if you're in resistance to being united with the parts of yourself, or if it's just not in this lifetime for you to do that. If you have a certain lifetime where you're supposed to focus on Aries this time. Aries is the focus. Aries is the energy that you're working. Then Libra is going to, you're not going to be in as many relationships. If you know who you are in Aries, then it will be easier for you to identify a person that can help you work on your stuff. If Aries is weak and you don't know that much about who you are, and you never really investigated that, then finding a partner is going to feel murky. That reptilian part of your brain is not going to really have a clear message to tell your frontal brain, oh yeah, this is the person. This is what I need. So that's kind of that access point. The Scorpio-Taurus axis point is more about values. And in the houses, the opposites make a lot of sense. We get opposites every time we have a full moon. So whenever there's a full moon, that means the moon is up against a certain constellation, let's say Aquarius, right? And that's going to happen in August. So the moon is in Aquarius, and then the Earth is back up against, and the sun is up against Leo. And so you have an opposition. And in those times, the energies can complement each other, or they can conflict with each other, depending on what your strengths and weaknesses are. Is this making sense? No?
We'll just go back to the simple, the opposites, I think.
Okay. So Scorpio and Taurus are about values. Okay. Kind of. Taurus is going to help you to understand how to be safe in the world and what you need to survive and to feel safe. Scorpio is, if you have those things and you feel like you're supported by the earth, then it's going to be a lot easier for you to feel safe being intimate with another person. It's going to allow you to go deep with them, right? Then Sagittarius and Gemini are opposites. Gemini is the early information that you learn when you're young, or just kind of the opinions that you have about your environment. And then Sagittarius is going to be the philosophies that you develop as you allow your old beliefs to fall away. So Sagittarius is asking you to be a new person and let all the ways you used to thought fall away, right? And that's kind of what I was talking about being the fool, allowing yourself to be in the energy of the fool, where you don't carry all of your old beliefs with you anymore. You let Gemini pass. So that's how those two are opposing. The Capricorn and Cancer polarity are, Cancer is about nurturing, and it's about mother, and it's about going inward, whereas Capricorn is all about building on the outside and on the external. If you have a hard time nurturing yourself, and if you have a hard time, I guess, feeling like you belong in the world, feeling like you can master your emotions, or at least understanding, not mastering your emotions, but you just understand that they're a part of life and they don't rule you, they don't make you stop doing your work, then Capricorn is possible. You can build things. If you tend to go over to Capricorn more and you just want to have quantifiable evidence and you want to build things and you are obsessed with that, then it could be that you don't feel safe in Cancer. You don't feel like the world is safe, so you always want to quantify your world so that you can feel safer in this lifetime. And Aquarius and Leo, Aquarius is all of the group energy, but if you don't establish a strong Leo and you don't learn how to create from your own uniqueness and play from that unique place, then you might get lost in the shuffle of Aquarius. You might just kind of adopt the mindsets and the energies of the groups that you're a part of, rather than bringing something fresh to the group. Does that make sense?
You know, what this is all saying to me is that there has to be a balance.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so if you're more in the personal side of the horoscope,
then you can use the opposite side
to develop and balance you more.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. That is exactly. So
they're not opposites.
They're not opposites. Like, they're not black and white opposites. Right. They're complementary.
One is better than the other, but it's all balancing.
It's all balancing. There's really important aspects to both. The Virgo-Pisces axis, Pisces says that there's no boundaries, that there's no separateness, and Virgo is trying to completely own your separateness and take care of yourself as a separate person. And so they're kind of opposite, but they're absolutely necessary for each other. It's kind of like the entire zodiac is working Libra energy. The entire zodiac is trying to get the missing pieces together. And I feel like in a weird way, well, it's not weird, in my mind's eye, we were all this one single point, and when we expanded out, we expanded into polarity. And so that's why the polarity even looks like it exists in the first place. But again, it's like a spectrum, right? It's just like it's just a spectrum, and if we meet at the middle, then there's no polarity at all. They're all balanced. And so...
And that's what we're always striving for.
Yeah, that's what we're striving for. It's
always.
Just centered, balanced.
We never feel complete because we're always...
We're always like this. Yeah, it's always like back and forth. Polarity. We live in a polarity world. Pisces would ask us to move into non-polarity, but even that is, the fact that it's even saying that there's polarity and non-polarity is like polarity, you know? and so we're kind of in this weird place where if you meditate, you can actually see all of the parts of you coming into the center in this little tiny space in your heart. And in the space of your heart, there's no polarity. There's no, like, Taurus and Pisces, you know, there's none of that stuff. It's all, like, periphery, like, bogus, whatever. The only reason it feels like anything is because we're on one side of a spectrum or another. When we're, like, super grounded, focused, and meditating, there's no such thing as astrology. There's no such thing as anything. There's only that little space in the heart, and that is the singularity space. And if we meditated a lot, we could be in that space, but we don't even have to be like sitting and meditating a lot. I feel that there are certain times when we can just be. And that's it. And so all of this stuff I feel eventually will be moot. All of this, everything, all the energy that I'm talking about, it'll be moot soon. But in the meantime, it's exciting to talk about. It's kind of fun to think about the fact that these polarities exist. And it could be that the reason why we feel a little off kilter is because the planets are never quite like perfectly balanced with each other. I was talking to some people last night, and I was talking about how the planets are spiraling around the sun, and the sun is shooting like a rocket through space, and as it shoots through and all the planets are spiraling through, they're moving and they're reflecting light off of each other. You know, sometimes they're like just across from each other, and bam, like a mirror. Like imagine if you had two mirrors and they came across, it would shoot the light at each other, and sometimes the earth gets stuck in between those beams of light, and so we get these awesome reflections from space on the earth, and it affects us on a molecular level, you know. But